there's times where we can be like, no, God, I don't need you right now. I'm trying to get closer to you. Like, hold on. Like, I'm on my way. I'm trying to get closer. Hold on. God, I don't need your help. I'm trying to get closer to you here. You know? And he's like, what? I'm literally trying to help you get closer to me. And we're like, no, I got this. I'm getting closer to you. Wait. And I find myself do that a lot. And it's an easy tendency, right? Because we're so used to in every other relationship, that transaction, like, I'm going to meet the goal. And it's like, we forget that, like, well, God is always the one that sends the invitation first.
Welcome back to another episode of PPK. Keone, you didn't see it on this side, man, but we lost video for a minute. We just been struggling today.
Yeah.
The devil don't want us to talk today. The devil does not want us to talk today. Back for another episode, boys. We've been consistent. I'm pretty proud of us for 2022.
Yeah. We're doing it.
Yeah, not a bad start to the year.
Good stuff. Trying to get caught up on Keone's beard game. So there's the little viewers maybe saying like, what's going on?
What's that sideburn?
I thought he wasn't into wearing masks. What's going on? Anyway, how's it going in Cali, Keone?
It's hot all of a sudden. It just went from like 75 to like 93 in one day. So we're starting to feel the classic winter to summer transition that Central Valley loves to pull off for us. So, but besides that, it's good.
Yeah, it's same over here. I mean, it's really not different. They try to say Arizona's all this craziness, and it's like, dude, been to Modesto.
Pretty
It's
much.
just 2 seasons.
It's a different heat, though. I will say, right? We were talking about this. Like their 90 doesn't feel like the 90 we're used to in NorCal. So.
Well, when you sweat like we do, 90 feels like 90, no matter where you are.
For real. That's real talk. I mean, this little light we got going on in front of me is coming on like the sun right now. So, anyway, it's good to be back, boys. Good to be back. And for this inspiration, we're gonna kick it back to Meeks.
Yeah, so for today's podcast, we're going to be discussing, me and Keone were kind of talking about this, and I think we mentioned on a few podcasts, but we've always been obviously very much in the camp of trying to be more ascetical and really doing things in order to build our relationship with Christ and strengthen our faith. And obviously through Exodus 90 and things like that, and we try to continue fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays, and just a lot of those things to sort of deny ourselves. And that's where we kind of view our relationship with Christ in a lot of ways, is through action and denying ourselves, and a lot of those things where we felt like a lot of people, good people, better than us, always speak of this true relationship they have with Christ that's like really in love. Like I was listening to Father Calloway on Pints of Aquinas with Matt Fradd, and they're both discussing how during their conversion they could just sit in the Adoration Chapel all day. Like you almost had to like take them out of the chapel, and just how in love they were with Jesus. And then I was talking to Keone, and I was like, dude, have you ever felt like that? Because it's pretty hard to get me in Adoration Chapel and actually sit there and things like that. And so it's really about just struggling in that personal relationship with Christ. Because, a lot of it, we talk about, what it means to be a Catholic man and a lot of these kind of things. But we also want to be able to share some of our struggles and where we feel are some weak areas, which we all have them and will forever have them. But it was really just diving into that idea of like, this personal relationship, I'm not really sure what it's like fully. I mean, in some ways, I think I'm better some days than I am in others, but I really hope to get to that point. But this is kind of just a discussion of, I don't know, what it tastes like, I guess.
It's hard. I'm just, reflecting on that conversation we had, Meeks, and like, it's something that I've seen. And like you said, a lot of people who are much holier than I am, even like recent converts, right? They really don't have any interaction with God, maybe prior to a, some sort of conversion event or, something. And it's just, they're just awestruck, right? And here I am, a Catholic from birth, and just, I can't resonate with that. And I want to clarify, like, I think Meeks and I both have had moments where we're like, dude, that was God, right? Or we've had like really um, amazing coincidences that weren't coincidences, and we're like, that's God. And and just feeling really in awe by how much God can move in our lives and the connections he made and all that. um, but at the end of the day, like in my prayer, and if like you said, Meeks, if I were to go into the chapel, like this love and like the deepest, almost like intimate silence and connection, that's been hard for me, to like really just sit there and just almost allow myself to be held
Mm.
by God as my father. It's more of like, I'm sitting with them, like we're on good terms right now. Like I've been doing all right, and he's like kind of proud of me, but I feel like, but are you proud of me though? And that's been something I've grown in a lot, but still have, I think, miles and miles to overcome. Is that, for me to open my heart for him as a father, because uh, I can often see him as the judge. And I think when we're dying to ourselves, we're doing these practices, we're trying to become saints. There's the temptation to earn that title. And so that's just something personally that I've been really struggling with, and that the aspect of the surrender first and then the action after, rather than vice versa. And I think oftentimes just the nature of, I think, how we grew up being very performance based, school wise. We were the straight A students. Basketball wise, whatever sport we were accomplishing, we wanted to make the all-star team. We wanted to win the championship. We wanted to do what we needed to do. We wanted to travel, which meant winning tournaments. Like, it was just very performance based. And I feel like that's carried on to our faith life, and how, oftentimes I'm measuring my standing with God based on my current performance. So that's been a struggle of mine.
If I could clarify too before Pops goes, I'm thinking in what you're talking about too, where I don't know if when I really think about it, I don't know if I feel like, oh, this is what I need to do to earn love. Like, when Dad was like, hey, you need to do leadership. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's 0 period. He's like, yeah, it's either that or basketball. I'm like, sick. Yeah. So 0 period sounds pretty good. 7 a.m. I got to be there. Is that what it is? And I don't think I was doing those things, or basketball, or taking all those AP classes, to feel like I needed to earn Dad's love. But it was more of a sense of like, no, this is your potential and what you need to be doing as a man. So then do that. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it makes sense. All right. And so I just started doing those things. If I'm doing 2-a-days on my own, it wasn't to earn Dad's love. It was more to be like, this is what expected. So if I see my dad going up and he's getting up at 4 to work out, why can't I? Or things like that. So I think when I'm thinking about my relationship with God, I don't see it as, oh, I need to do this in order to get the love. I think I'm like, this is what's necessary for me as a Catholic, as a practicing Christian, as someone who claims belief in God, that this is what I need to be doing. I think I just don't really think about the love part, to be honest with you. Like, I'm just like, what's love got to do with it? Like, I don't know. And that's the thing. I follow a couple Protestants, that are not really because of the faith part, but just I think they're cool, and then they're Protestants as well. And those people really love Jesus, man. They really do. They love their Bible. They wake up, they do that. And I was just talking to Ella. I was like, dude, we got to be like that. Like, we should be doing these journals and reading passages together and things like that. Even though we probably won't understand what's going on for a lot of it, but like I desire that sort of relationship and that intimacy. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a weird, cold-hearted part of me or something like that. And then I'll share this before I move on too. I think me and Kim are talking about in the same way with Our Lady, looking at her as a mother. It's super difficult for me, and I don't know why. I've been playing the rosary pretty consistently for probably like a couple years now. I'm still like, I love, when people are saying, how powerful the rosary is. I know it's my fault. Like, I'm not saying anything against it. But I'm just like, man, how long does it take for me to get there to where I really feel like, and I think a lot of it's obviously my own distraction, and when we're talking about adoration, a lot of it's like, you just got to be able to sit there and then bring that part to it. And I think this little podcast is about, well, the struggles that we feel and all that. So,
yeah, I think a couple of things to bring clarification, because, and it's more of a question than it is a statement, but are we talking about that emotional feeling of a relationship? So like when you guys described it, is it because I think we're kind of an intellectual family in the sense of like, or most of us are intellectual in the sense of like, there is a an intellectual conversion that we have, right? So we're critical thinkers, and we definitely are. We can reason to truth, and I mean all of us as humans. But I think in our family, that's kind of been the general inclination. The difficult thing is we're not, at least a handful of us here, at least us three, aren't really about the feels so much, right? Like we prefer the grind, and we know, like, we're rule followers. Like, boom, what's it going to take? This is what we'll do. Let's go get after it, right? And we don't make excuses. And if we do, we shame ourselves into just doing it anyway, right? So it's like kind of one of those. So are we talking about the emotional feeling of a relationship with Christ?
Mm-hmm. I would answer that when I'm talking about what Miko and I yearn for, it's not the like rudimentary, like, oh, I feel God here, right? I feel like that can be very confusing and easily manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think of is almost like, we talk about the stages of prayer, and there's the more unitive stage where it's almost like that wedding, that marital relationship with Jesus, and even our mother, that like intimate, like I can just rest in their arms, and like so close. And so not so much of like, I feel it in my heart and my soul. Like, no, I'm not talking about any of that. But I think the part that, at least for myself, that's missing is that as far as God and my relationship, I know He loves me. I know He loves me. I know that no matter what I do, He wants me back, or he desires my holiness, my good, and my heart more than I ever could be willing to give or want to give. And He invites me all the time. But there's almost like, Miko, when you mention that cold heart, I kind of resonate with that. It's almost like I hear it, but I see it as like a mathematical equation. Like, yeah, I understand, like A plus B equals C. Like, I get that. But it doesn't, like, oh my gosh, like, He like wants my heart. Like he loves me so much. He died for, like that realization. And then like just to be captivated by that in a way that maybe not necessarily is pure emotional, but has an emotional component that leads to like almost like a shift in the way I view the world and my relationship with God, who He is, like being in touch more with His beauty. I don't know if that's making sense, but like
It does.
not so much as like a purely, touchy feeling. Oh, He loves me. I feel so good. Like not that, because I love the fact that we can reason the truth, right? Like true love is based on knowledge of and also action. However, there's still that gaze that you talk about when you look at your beloved. Yeah. And I feel like that part is the missing piece. On top of the reason is great, and the knowledge and the apologetics and the whatever are obviously amazing, because that's how you truly get to know God and His beauty and His complexity as much as we can on earth. But there's almost that, like when you think about in heaven, all you're doing is gazing at Him. Yep. And like that's all you need. And like, people experience that to some extent here on earth. And I feel like I haven't even almost scratched the surface of the surface. So that's kind of just been a missing piece that I've been wanting to, like with Mother Mary too, just like even just having a conversation with her throughout the day, like, Mother, like, thank you for this, or like walk with me as I'm doing this event, or I'm about to talk to this client, or whatever I'm doing in my day to day. It's something that I think, when you mentioned, Meeks, the idea of Mary, it almost help me reflect on my relationships in general, spiritually. Like, there's no saint that like I have a go-to saint. There's some people like St. Padre Pio's like, that's my guy. Like, we talk all the time, and I pray to him, and I feel so close to him. Like, I don't even have any of that. And so I'm wondering if it's not just God. It's almost like the spiritual relationship. There's some sort of barrier or cognitive like fence that I haven't been able to leap through to really allow myself to just be in an intimate relationship with either our brothers and sisters in heaven, or our Heavenly Father or Mother.
Mm-hmm. No, and the reason why I ask, because I think I know how we're kind of all wired, and so I actually can relate to both of what you're saying. But to comment on kind of the emotional piece, I think I shared this with Meeks, and I think I told Mom, but like Father Sergio at St. Anne's, Keone, you know Father Sergio at St. Anne's, right? The Spanish priest, the pastor. There was one mass where he was, I think it was like a daily mass, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it's besides the point. But it was at the point of consecration, and it wasn't a Latin mass because it was at one of the masses where it was just a normal Novus Ordo, but he prays all of his consecration prayers in Latin. And you know how they have the crucifix there so they can look to the crucifix when they're going through the consecration, right? And during the consecration, he was in love with the Lord. So I saw, like you're watching his gaze into his beloved, like you're saying, right? So you can think about this when I think about your mom, when I think about you as kids, when I think about you guys and your significant others, your spouses, you're talking about, there's that gaze, there's that oneness that's there that without any word spoken at all, right? This is how Father Sergio was with our Lord. Like it was at the consecration, he's looking at the crucifix, he's holding the precious body of our Lord, and the man is in love. And I remember coming home, and I remember saying in my heart, and then coming home and vocalizing it to family, like, I want faith like that. Like where you are just like, it's just him and our Lord. Like, sure, we're all there, we're witnessing to it, right? He's stepping into the Holy of Holies on our behalf, but it's just like that. And I think we all can relate to having those types of experiences, but it's the everyday experience, right? And I can relate to you, Keone, because as broken as my childhood was, I feel very much like I had to merit love, right? I had to merit, like if I wasn't doing well, if I wasn't performing well, if I wasn't valedictorian, if I wasn't president of the school, if I wasn't captain of the football team, if I wasn't get accepted to West Point, then I'm not really much, right? And so I can definitely, that resonates with me. And then a lot of what we do just to grind wise is just like, well, no, you want to lose weight, stop eating, fat guy, right? You want to work out, you know what I mean? Push the plate away, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is. Like that's kind of how we've operated. Like we don't make excuses in the house. And so we're used to the grind. And so some of it is like, but then we become a little bit sterile, a little bit cold. It doesn't mean we're not open. Like we sit there in adoration. We all spend time in adoration. We all pray the daily rosary. We all, whether it's liturgy hours or whatever it may be, but it's kind of like reaching out to the listeners to be able to say like, we're striving for holiness just like you. And we struggle. We struggle with that relationship. We struggle with like, God, are you really there? And then sometimes it's transactional, right? It's unfortunate. It's very transactional. Hey, Blessed Mama Mary, I need you to work on this for me. Hey, guardian angel, I need you to work on that for me. And then we just start spewing out little petitions. I mean, of course, I'm being a little bit facetious in that sense where we're not just doing that, but it's just like, I need your help, right? St. Joseph, Keone, like being our patron saint. I mean, really patron saint for all of us men, but having that as a confirmation saint, but like struggling with that relationship, struggling relationship with the guardian angel, struggling relationship. So yeah, I think there is something to be said for all of us to be like, yeah, we struggle with that sometimes. Some enter into that relationship a lot easier than others, but I think that's kind of what we were trying to hit on, right, Mix?
Yeah. When you were saying that the intellectual piece, for me in my journey, it was like I'd already been to big conferences and stuff, but when I really tried to make changes in my life is when I finally understood everything. It wasn't when I had gone through these retreats or things and it was like this super spiritual high. It was when, okay, I can see it all now. I understand where everything's coming. I understand the church position on this. I understand what I need to do now. So then I just go and do it. And yeah, to your point, I don't think it's really an emotional issue. Yeah, I can't really figure it out. I think, I'm even thinking about just prayer in general, where I think it's hard to navigate, like especially people who are haven't been practicing the faith for a long time, right? So like people that we try to go to, the audience that we're trying to talk to, it's like, how do you really sit and pray? Because I'm like, okay, when I'm like saying my own petitions for the rosary, like I usually have the same ones that I do, and I'm like, is there like a certain limit to how many intentions I should have, or like can I really just throw all of them out there? And if I do it every day, like should I be switching it up? A lot of times I'm praying for my us, our family, things like that, marriage and the ministry, and I'm like, well, maybe I should start spreading some to people outside of the world, the poor, the homeless, those things. I think I struggle with a lot of that stuff. It's just like because I think it's this idea that we need structure, the three of us. So it's like I don't really want to. I don't really want to feel my way through anything. I just want you to just let me know what I need to do, you know?
Yeah.
Give me the foundation, like what's right and what's wrong. Okay, I just want to do what's right and then figure that out, you know? So it's hard for me to, I guess, feel my way through prayer and that kind of stuff. And I also, I guess I would want to clarify, like, yeah, when I'm in the chapel, I feel a sense of peace and absolute reverence. Now, what I'm missing is this like super in love feeling. And I think that just might be, maybe it's just a temperament of mine, you know, like not never really feeling like a super in love. Not that, you know, obviously with all the things are different, you know, a girl can do that to you for sure. But I don't know. I think just in the, I guess, you know, I remember watching a lot of Montel Fish videos when he really just do kind of these vlog settings where he talk about what he was struggling with at the time, you know, the good old days when Montel Fish would do that. And I remember him just, you know, waking up at like, he'd say he'd wake up at like 5 or 6 and he'd just go on a walk. And then it was just, he just in a conversation with God at that point. And I guess there's a certain level of me that maybe feels like, I don't know if that's enough. Like personally, I don't know if it's enough to go and just have a conversation. I feel like it's more, I feel like I get more, maybe it's like a pride thing that maybe I get more out of it or I'm doing more if I go to the Latin Missal and I look at their morning prayers and I do that. And I'm like, that's how you start your day right there. You know? And I don't know what that is. I don't know what where that's going on in my head, but that's how I feel with a lot of things of like, sometimes it's more, I feel like it's more efficacious for me to go and read some of these prayers that are really good from the saints than to just sit there and talk to God. So yeah, I don't know if that's that's necessarily a right or wrong thing, but that's how I tend to feel a lot of times. Is like I would rather go and pray the St. Thomas Aquinas prayer after receiving the Eucharist than do this thing where I'm like trying to figure out, okay, like what's a good prayer right now for me to say after this, and like I don't know, it's a weird thing. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but that's kind of how I feel.
It's like I think one of that struggle is, and I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and, as usual, as a Catholic, right? Because sometimes I think we overthink things, right? And sometimes we try to articulate, and words can't really come to our mind. So the prayers of the church, especially by some of the great saints, speak to what your heart is feeling, or speak to where you are at that moment. And so I think and that's the thing. Like even with, you know, when people, especially those who are outside of the church, don't understand the rosary, you know, Protestants in particular, they think it's repetitious prayer, which it is, but it helps you get into that meditative state where you're meditating on the mysteries of the passion, death, resurrection of our Lord. And so the whole point is that it's a vehicle into a deeper meditation of the Lord's, great mysteries, of which we now conform ourselves to through the praying of the rosary. So I think it's an either or. I hear what you're saying, because I think and I do both. I mean, there's, you know, what you would call ejaculatory prayers, in the sense of just like, hey, you know, I'm praying, you know, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner, or Lord, help me, you know, give me the words as I go into this meeting, or, you know, give me the grace and wisdom that I'm going to need as I, you know, try to present on this topic. But I think I hear what you're saying completely. It may be a temperament thing. So I was going to throw that at you, Keone. What are your thoughts? Because we've all obviously know our temperaments. So how much of this is just about our temperaments, right? The way that our love language is, or even just like our conditioning, right? Part of this, me as your father, in both those cases, you just described two different experiences, right? Where you're like, well, no, I'm not feeling like I had to win Dad's love, but perhaps Keone on his side is like, nah, and you know, there's this pressure, and if I didn't do X, could that be a father issue too, right? Or relationship specifically?
Yeah, you know, I don't know if it was, and you're kind of speaking to me, but I don't know if it was, if I don't get an A, then that means I'm not loved. I don't know if it went that far. I think I knew that you guys love me no matter what, but the value, that the emphasis that we put on that goal, then I didn't meet that goal. So I think what it was is I failed that mission. I don't think it went as far as for me to question my identity, but maybe my identity lied in achieving that mission, whatever it was. And right, so I tackle that issue, and then you move on. And if you didn't, well, you failed that mission, and it sucks, and you kind of hold on to it. But then you go on to the next mission, and it's very, like you said, transactional, almost robotic. And I feel like that's what it is with God. I don't necessarily doubt that He loves me, but like that felt sense. I can beat myself up. I messed up. What's going on? And then you're eager to get back on the grind, so you can feel that sense of accomplishment again. And so when I'm thinking of my temperament, in my love language, words of affirmation, which you don't really get from God. I mean, you read the scripture and everything, but like I almost like I want to hear, right? I like seek it out, like
Mm-hmm.
for him to like, I'm proud of you. You are doing everything you need. Like it's almost like I have to pause for a second. And when I think of my temperament, being a melancholic, I'm very critical, right? And so kind of what Meeks was saying, like I can be praying, and something that I've been really focusing on is like accepting where I'm at right now in my disposition, right? So if I'm praying, even though maybe on paper the prayer after the like prayer after I receive from Saint Thomas Aquinas is like objectively more full and holy than I could ever come up with, my disposition lies first with my own heart, and I think I have to trust in the fact that God will lead me to that prayer to Saint Thomas Aquinas when I'm more disposed as an avenue, um, almost like to be a vehicle of His grace, like to just transform me. Like, and I feel like, for example, once I found out the Latin Mass, right, I'm like, and I hear Father Ripperger talk about like how the Latin language is objectively more holy because it's tied to the cross, as
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to English, right? So I'm like diving in, right? Us being very, we want to be the best. We're like, let's go to the holiest language. And I go back and forth. I still pray the rosary in Latin mostly, but there's times where I'm like, I just want to pray in English. And I have to almost shut up that part of me when we talk about parts. That's like, well, that's not the holiest. Well, now you're not, now you feel back. Well, you're just doing like the English version. Like, are you really growing? And I have to like pause myself in that and be like, no, 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 no. If I allow myself to just be, and my intention is to love and serve God authentically, well, God will lead me to love the Latin for God's sake, not for a mission's sake, not for it's the holiest language on paper's sake, but because it truly praises Him the way He deserves to be praised, and I have to be patient to reach that goal when He wants me to reach it, not when I think I need to be a certain way. And that's been a huge kind of shift as I'm trying to progress in my spiritual life. Is like there's going to be moments where you're on fire and you're like, let's do it, and there's going to be moments where you're not, and that's the humility to be like, you're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and I feel like the more I'm like, all right, God, I'm going to trust that even if this prayer is like haphazard and it's lazy, that I'm going to do it anyway, trusting that you're going to make it better tomorrow because I'm surrendering and I'm going to be open to your grace. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. The other thing, just back as we rewind back to your Father Sergio experience,
Mm-hmm.
I see that most recently with Gianna.
Hmm.
So I'm holding my daughter, right, and I'm putting her to bed, or she's kind of playing with her toys while I'm like right behind her, and I feel this just like, oh my gosh, this is like the most beautiful thing ever. Like I just love her so much. I literally want to eat her, right? It's just like it's this awe inspired. Like I feel that connection like to a crazy extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that with Michelle, my wife, as well. But like to transfer that to God, it's almost like, well, I can think of a picture that's kind of cool. Right? I can think of Jesus on the cross or like the Divine Mercy Jesus. Like I can think of that, but like to look at that painting or to envision him in my mind and to have that same reaction seems so far fetched to me that I'm wanting to translate that love and awe. And I know my love for Gianna is just a mirroring of God, right? It's like I'm seeing Him in her, and I know that here. But to like, just to get there is and I don't really know what to make of that. I think it's just the nature of, like you said, there's going to be a temperamental barriers. There's going to be my own wounds and bad habits and just my growth in my prayer life. But I think we're recognizing, at least for me, like the patience in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think that the thing about it too is allowing, and I think St. Thomas Aquinas was big on this, right? That it's being steady through the faith. So if we only are faithful on the highs and on the lows, what happens when we experience the spiritual dryness? What happens when we don't get anything, right? So when you're at the bottom, cool, it's easy to cry out from the belly of that place. When you're in a spiritual high and you are feeling the consolation and the comfort and the love of the Father embracing you as a beloved child, it's really easy to be there. But what happens when you don't? When we're talking about, because I think this is what's important for our listeners out there, is that even with your best intentions and your best fought effort, you're going to run into the issues that we run into because we're human. we're broken, we're wounded, we got blind spots, all of these things. And so some people will tend to tap out because, well, see, I've been doing this Catholic thing for 6 months now. And I don't got it like Keone's got it, right? Everyone has these assumptions because you're on a podcast that's called Priest, Prophet, King, or because you go to daily mass, or because, man, you know the rosary and you know it in Latin, you must be a super holy person. It's like, no, I strive to be holy, right? And then they think, well, you probably don't struggle with your relationship with Christ. It's like, what are you talking about? We're sinful creatures. Of course we do. What about you, Mix? What else you got to say on this?
Yeah. It's funny. I was just watching Father Mike Schmidt's video on prayer, and he was talking about how when he was like reading the saints, I forgot which one it was specifically, but he was saying that it might have been Saint Faustina maybe, but he was saying that how she was saying whichever one it was, she would say that hours felt like minutes in prayer. And then he was like, well, why is it for me why minutes feel like hours, you know? And like, am I doing this wrong? And I think there's a lot of like we say, everything's always both and. There's never like one way or another. But I think personally so this might be a good solution, but also me trying to fix the problem by using the problem again. So I'm like, okay, so I'm struggling with a personal relationship. So let me read about people who, let me read more about how to get that, like that whole thing of I need structure. So then I started reading St. Francis de Sales' Introduction to Devout Life, right?
Yep. Great book.
And because I also like things that really like, punch me in the face a little bit. Because then I'm like, I got something out of that. It's just over. I don't know, dude. I'm an addict or something. I got an issue where it's like, I just need to be punched. And like, yeah, that's how we get going. And so I was reading that and I'm like, great. And then he has reflections too. I'm like, sick, dude, this is all I need. And then it's like, well, maybe actually what you should do is just not use anything and just sit there for a little bit. So there's both, right? But then I'm like, I'm like thinking about, how am I going to overcome this issue? Oh, wait, let me read something that's actually the issue of what I'm doing. And then, read a prayer. But I complain about not being able to, say a prayer or whatever it is. And I think there's a little bit of both. Whereas like, because my idea is that, okay, I'm always reading for knowledge or listening for knowledge. Maybe I should try to follow the life of a saint or something like that more closely. Not that you shouldn't try to strive for certain knowledge so that you're better equipped and things like that, because that's a lot of how I started to practice my faith more was through knowledge. Oh, okay, I understand. So that's something that I've been trying to, I'm trying to have a balance where it's like, because I'll be in bed like, oh my gosh, I didn't read something like classic, dude. What an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, of course, I'm not reading. My brain's rotting. I keep watching these YouTube videos and all this kind of stuff. And so there's got to be a certain level, I think, of like, just be still. And then I think a lot of it, a big point is that you're just going to have to fight through a lot of times when you're just distracted. Like, silence yourself and practicing. Yeah, you're going to be distracted probably for a very long time, right? Like because of my nature, I'll just read like 3 pages of a book and then pick up another book, 3 pages, and then 6 months goes by, then I'll finish the first chapter and I'll just do that. So I've been about a year of Cardinal Seurat's Power of Silence. You could check actually. I'm sure the first time I mentioned it, because our detachment episode, I think, or whatever, I was talking about it, and that was probably like a year ago. So I'm not done yet, but I still kind of, chip away at it. But a lot of times he's just saying like, it's hard, but you're going to have to sit and fight through that silence. Yeah. So I try to do that on car rides or certain issues where I'm just like, dude, don't pick up anything, don't listen to anything, just sit there. And then, next thing I know, like 10 minutes goes by and I'm in all these weird places in my mind and stuff like that. So I think some of it too is like, for people who are struggling with the same thing, I think maybe we all just have to kind of sit there and just learn how to deal with it. Like learn how to deal with silence into a point where you can hear God, because that's going to be, I think, a bigger issue. I'm not sure if I'll ever have, super hard eye emojis, in the nearest future when I'm at adoration, but at least at the very sense, if I can commit to being silent and not distracting myself, I can at least hear him, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not gonna, maybe I'm not gonna be in that emotional, lovey stage of it. I hope to be, one day, but maybe, my next step is just like, can you not think about every random thing that's ever happened in your life? Can you just sit there and try to focus? And it's a brutal thing to go through, but it's definitely necessary. And I think when you sit in the chapel, that's when you realize how much you distract yourself with. You're like, dude, why the hell is this song in my head right now? It's like not the time for this song to be in my head or whatever it is. You're like, classic. Like, why am I thinking about a good trade for the Heat and the Cavs? Like, what am I doing right now? I'm in the chapel. I don't need to think about what they could add to win the championship. This just doesn't make sense at this moment. But that's just the kind of stuff you do, and you're like realizing, and then that's when you sit and you're like, wow, I really do just stuff my head with a lot of things, Like, why do I know where every college basketball every basketball player went to college? It's not that necessary, but I do know it. So then, you sit in the chapel, you're like, yeah, Shane Battier did go to Duke, just random things like that. Yeah. And I think what I'm doing right now is like just going through talking out loud like I do in chapel. So you guys take it away.
Cody.
Well, I was just going to say, I think as I've been, hopefully growing in my faith, it's been a balance between staying structured, because structure allows for virtue, right? I mean, you're building virtuous habits through structure, and I think there's a blessing in that. But also, and this is like you said, the beauty of the both and in the Catholic Church, but also an openness for God to work through that structure, right? So, like, the classic example is like, well, what happens if Gianna's having a rough time and that structure gets kind of shifted and I have to be attentive to her? Do I lose my peace because of the structure? Or do I understand that my duty as a father is to serve Gianna, and I'm praising God and glorifying him through that? And like, how much am I open to whatever's at play, and whether the Holy Spirit's guiding me right then and there? And that's been something that I've been like really trying to maintain, because at the end of the day, all of us, we're going to like try to do the best and do the best way. Right. And I think there's times where we can be like, no, God, I don't need you right now. I'm trying to get closer to you. Like, hold on. Like, I'm on my way. I'm trying to get closer. Hold on. God, I don't need your help. I'm trying to get closer to you here. And he's like, what? I'm literally trying to help you get closer to me. And we're like, no, I got this. I'm getting closer to you. Wait. And I find myself do that a lot. And it's an easy tendency, right? Because we're so used to, in every other relationship, that transaction, like, I'm going to meet the goal. And it's like we forget that, like, well, God is always the one that sends the invitation first. And I have to almost like, okay, trusting, like, maybe I'm not ready for this, or maybe right now is not the right time, or maybe I'm not fully disposed to be all in during this examination of conscience. I'm going to be distracted. I'm not going to be super complete and thorough because I'm broken. I'm just not there, and accept that. And that's more of a need for God to be the center, more of a need for him to take over, because you're going to realize that you're broken. I mean, that's one of the stages. And like, after I think it was the first, when you're after the meditative state in prayer, you're like, then you realize that, like, you no longer can do anything on your own. Like, you've reached that amount, and now it's all God. And I think that's, to a certain extent, we're experiencing that. And like, you can only do so much, and to the point where you surrender, that's the extent that you'll actually have that potential to have that union with him.
Yeah, you're talking, about the kind of the whole unitive experience, and most of the time we're probably spending in the purgative, right? Like, we're just constantly chipping away at all the distractions. I spend a good portion. I'm a holy hour tomorrow morning, 3:00 in the morning, because that's just how your dad rolls sometimes. And it's a fight sometimes to be one structured. Hey, I got all these petitions I'm taking on. I got my family to pray for. I got my rosary I got to do, my liturgy of the hours, my Divine Mercy Chaplet. And then I got the struggle of, why can't I just sit here and just be with you? And then I have the fight with myself, right? Why can't I? You're right here, right in front of me. Why can't you just shut your mouth and just listen to God, right? So it's that internal fight of just like,
like, hold on, God. I'm arguing with myself. Yeah, wait a second. Exactly. Yeah. I'll get back to you in a second, but I'm going to argue about myself for 5 minutes because I'm not giving you attention. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to argue with myself.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So I think it's like, trying to encourage our listeners too, that, man, you just gotta, the thing about being a saint is that you strive for holiness, and striving means it's like a vigorous, like, if you really looked up the definition, it's a vigorous opposition towards something else, right? So striving doesn't mean we just kind of sit there half-hearted, right? Striving actually means like we're fighting tooth and nail to grow in virtue and to grow in holiness. So sometimes it's going to feel like an absolute war just to sit there for 10 minutes of silence, and I don't think it's far-fetched. Like, we're sharing this with you just to be vulnerable, to encourage you, but don't think it's so far off to be able to sit and love an hour of adoration. Because I'll tell you what, the silence before the Lord is the best silence that you'll ever have. It's just not always going to feel like that, right? It's not always going to be easy. And so just want to encourage the listeners out there that, we share this with you to show you that, one, we're human, we're struggling just like you are, but we strive to be better. We strive to be better Catholics and to be faithful sons and, I guess for us, just sons of God. I was going to say sons and daughters, but that would be awkward in this context. So,
unless one of you has something to share.
Yeah, unless there's any secrets you guys want to let out. So, some Meek's parting words.
Yeah, and it's funny because when Keone was kind of saying about surrendering, just giving what you have, I feel like you can like read that in like either like St. Paul's writings or like different saints' lives where they're just like give it, but then you're like, dude, you just said like the most poetic thing I've ever heard in my life, and then you're just like, I'm just nothing, man, and I don't know what to do, I don't know what to pray. It's like you just literally invented 6 prayers that I say every single day or whatever. So I think that's funny too, because sometimes I'm like, you hear the saints to talk about like, how low or dumb I am, and I don't know anything. I give it all. I'm like, dude, you do even know. And like, what I'm going through or whatever it is, like, I don't have no clue. No, but I guess my parting words are, man, learn how to just sit. I guess we're just trying to learn how to sit in silence, really. I think that's a big key, I think, in all of this. I think books and all this kind of stuff helps and knowledge. But I don't think that's really where I'm struggling at in my personal life. I think I'm always striving for those things. What I probably need to strive for is just like chill out, dude. And my other parting words would have to be this other man. I had this crazy reflection in adoration the other day, and I was sitting there. I was like, "Dang, dude, if only." Oh, God was talking to me, right? And he was telling me, this issue. It's not an issue that you have, but I see it in other people. I'm like, that's weird how God would tell me other people's problems, right? Like, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense at all. So, anyways, he was telling me other people's problems. He was like, the thing is though, that they don't like when you tell them to like the video. They don't subscribe when you tell them to subscribe. They're not really following the Instagram or sharing anything. And I was like, yeah, it's so true, God. You know what I mean? Like, I've been trying to say the same thing. And so it came to me in adoration. I don't know if, it's not church approved or anything. So let's not get crazy about it. But I just got that out there.
It's not like Our Lady of Turlock or anything.
Yeah, like no, I'm going to throw it out to you guys. But I also do want to say, we've been consistent. We're going to keep being consistent. I have more interviews on the way as well. I think my dad's going to interview me and Keone. Have a fun video in the works, and we also are starting a new series soon as well on the podcast. So things are getting fun. You guys got to keep supporting. Let's get some more petitions for my recent apparition, and maybe we get that thing church approved. Our Lady of Chandler. Our Father of Chandler. I don't know what we're gonna call it, but we'll work on it together. Everybody in the comments.
Keone, what you got to say?
I mean, how do you follow that? I mean, I guess, my only parting words is to, like you said, Pop, strive for holiness, but rest where you're at the same time. And I think that's a very delicate battle because we often try to drag ourselves to holiness, and it's God who walks with us that way. And so just resting where you're at in humility, but continue that strive as he guides you, and not self-driven. So that's my parting words for all the listeners and for myself.
Absolutely. I think to end on one of the quotes that we love is Exodus 14:14, right? It's the Lord will fight for you. All you have to do is stand still. So instead of trying to white knuckle your way to holiness, allow the Lord to work through you, with you, and in you. And we appreciate you joining us on this episode. Know that we're human just like you, and we're striving for holiness. So you know how we do it. Get holy or die trying. God's peace.